If you've ever been to Las Vegas, then chances are you've stayed at one of their many hotels and casinos. While it might seem like a fun place to visit for some gambling and entertainment, the reality is that it's owned by some very dangerous people. Before we can understand how the Mafia took over Las Vegas, we must first learn about the organization itself. Despite being portrayed in films and TV shows as wearing dark suits, the Mafia actually started off as a group of Sicilian peasants who used violence to defend themselves against the land they worked on. It happened through a mixture of bribery, threats, and intimidation. Now that the Mafia had established itself in Las Vegas, they created a governing body to oversee it all. They were responsible for making sure that their families' interests were looked after, and that they were getting their fair share of the profits. The city was full of opportunities to make money, and the crime families were able to use the casinos to launder their profits from other illegal activities. In the 1970s, the government decided to take a more proactive approach to fighting organized crime. This included breaking up the commission and arresting many of the bosses and their associates. This was a major blow to the Mafia, and it made it much harder for them to operate in Las Vegas. Over the years, the government continued to crack down on the Mafia's activities, and eventually they were forced to give up control of the casinos. Today, the Mafia is no longer involved in the gambling industry in Las Vegas. However, they still have a presence in the city and are involved in other criminal activities such as drug trafficking and extortion. The government continues to try and break up their operations, but the Mafia is still a powerful force in Las Vegas today. Over the years, they were able to bribe and intimidate their way to total control of the city's gambling industry. While the government did try to crack down on the Mafia's activities, they were largely unsuccessful. The crime families were able to use their influence and power to avoid any serious consequences. In fact, the Mafia was so powerful that they were even able to get away with murder. There were many instances of mobsters being killed, and the assassins never being caught. This only added to the mystique and allure of Las Vegas, and made it even more popular with gamblers and tourists alike. Each boss had their own strengths and weaknesses, but all of them were ruthless when it came to taking care of business. One of the most famous bosses was Charles Lucky Luciano, who was known for his intelligence and ability to stay one step ahead of the police. From its humble beginnings as a small-time gambling operation, the Mafia's influence on Las Vegas has grown exponentially over the years. Through a combination of threats, intimidation, and bribery, they've been able to maintain their grip on the city's gambling industry for decades. Despite the government's best efforts to crack down on their activities, the Mafia has managed to stay one step ahead of the law. Only time will tell if they'll ever be brought to justice for their crimes. If you want to know more about the Mafia, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. He was also the one who helped set up the first casino in Las Vegas. Another famous boss was Vito Genovese, who was in charge of the family that eventually controlled most of the casinos. He was a shrewd businessman and was able to expand the Mafia's criminal empire to new heights. This was called the Commission and was made up of representatives from each of the 5 crime families. Their job was to make sure everything ran smoothly and that no one tried to expand the Mafia's criminal operations. If anyone tried to cause trouble, they would be banished from the organization and possibly killed. This rule helped keep the peace between the different crime families and allowed them to continue working together. The commission also made sure that the government officials were being paid off, that the police weren't causing any problems. For decades, organized crime had been running illegal lotteries, slot machines, and card games in secret. But in the early 20th century, the Nevada government decided to legalize gambling and create regulated casinos. This opened up the door for the Mafia to enter the casino business. Before long, the various crime families had bought several casinos and were running them with the help of corrupt officials. The main goal was to launder the money made from other illegal activities, as they needed a place where large amounts of cash could be moved around without raising suspicion. The Nevada government was happy to allow the Mafia to run the casinos because they were bringing in a lot of tax revenue. However, they did try to keep a close eye on them to make sure they were unengaging in any shady dealings. But soon enough, the government officials were being bribed, and the Mafia had complete control. Eventually, the Mafia turned into an organized crime syndicate that dealt with extortion, money laundering, and smuggling. When the government didn't do anything to protect them, this led to the creation of a secret society called the Cosa Nostra, or Our Thing, which has become more commonly known as the Mafia. This was a group of gangsters who lived by a strict code of honor. They had a very complex hierarchy and were bound together by blood oaths and other rituals. The higher-ups in the organization rarely got involved with illegal activities. Instead, they acted as supervisors and made sure everything ran smoothly. To join the Mafia, you had to be born into it, as the families would not accept outsiders. It wasn't until 1915, when the Baldacchini crime family was founded, that the U.S. became involved with the Mafia. Soon after, other Italian immigrants heard about the riches the Baldacchinis were making and wanted to get involved themselves. More Mafia families were founded, and before long they became a powerful force. These mobsters have made billions of dollars over the years from these casinos and have even gone largely unpunished. By the start of World War II, most of the crime families had moved to the United States and were now operating there. They had a significant amount of power and influence and were able to control much of the country, vice, and gambling industries. Now, despite the Mafia doing many illegal things, they also helped the U.S. during World War II. This included rescuing downed Allied airmen, smuggling weapons into the country, and protecting Jewish refugees. The U.S. knew about the Mafia's involvement in criminal activity, but because of their help during the war, they chose to overlook it. But the U.S. government wasn't the only one who looked the other way when it came to the Mafia. Because of the huge amount of money the syndicate was making, other businesses often turned a blind eye to their crimes. The police were also sometimes paid off and turned a blind eye to Mafia activity, while other times they were too afraid to get involved. So what's the story behind the mob's rise in Las Vegas? Let's find out. The founding of the Mafia, moving to America, entering the casino business.
Now what? So how did this all lead to the Mafia controlling Las Vegas?
Well, the answer isn't straightforward. The commission, the Mafia bosses.
Underneath the commission were the bosses of each family. The rise of Las Vegas. With the help of these bosses, Las Vegas quickly became the center of the Mafia's criminal empire. The downfall of the Mafia. Despite the Mafia's success in Las Vegas, their luck would eventually run out. Conclusion.